Welcome to Distance is No Obstacle, the medical education podcast aimed at providing bite-sized education and information for people working in rural and remote Australia. Today we hear the latest information and research on vaping in Australia. Our podcast hosts are Australian Council on Smoking and Health co-CEOs, Geraldine Mellet and Laura Hunter. This is the second of a two-part series.
Rates of tobacco and now vaping use in First Nations communities are really shocking. But a lot of progress has been made by the Tackling Indigenous Smoking program, which operates right around Australia. ACOSH actually supports a group from TIS and other Aboriginal workers in this space. And today we want to introduce you to Victor Smith, Regional Tobacco Coordinator with Bega Health Service, to talk about the kind of work that they're doing right now and what they're seeing with vaping.
You see how much people do it in the community, and now young people start doing it, like especially with vaping now. We've had calls from primary schools around Kalgoorlie asking if we can go into their primary schools and do a bit of work with them, educate them on the dangers of what vaping does to these young guys, So vaping's just gone right through our community like a big wave of, it's just crazy.
How young are these kids in primary schools?
Oh, yeah, so they'd probably be in year 6. I don't know how old you'll be in year 6, maybe 10 or 11 or something. But, I think vapes are just so easy to get, the access to vapes, anyone with a credit card can get online and order a box of vapes in bulk. And next thing you know, 3 days, 4 days later, they rock up at your house and there you go. You got about 20 vapes, and a lot of these kids these days down at the high school, they order them online for, say, $200. Then they get about 20 of them. They take them down to the school and sell them for $25, $30. They're more than doubling their money, So based in Kalgoorlie, we get down to Esperance, which is 400 k's down to the beach from us. Nearest beach is Esperance. Esperance is also, it's highly populated with Indigenous people. It's also a big tourist town, so tourists come from all over the world. So vaping's big all over the world now, but not just with those guys, but in the Indigenous population, vaping's gone really big as well. And that's 400 k's south to us. We also go up north about 400 k's to Leonora and Laverton and out to the communities. But just recently, after the last financial year, our region has opened right up. So we go, as far as Walloona, which is maybe 700 k's from here, but then up further to Warburton, Warracoona, where you're looking at 1,200 k's to 1,400 k's away, So, and that's right out in the bush there, really remote. So we talk to the guys up in the lands there, up in the communities. It's not as big yet, but it's there. They've seen it, so they got an understanding of what it is, and that's how it was in Kalgoorlie a couple of years ago. It was getting around, but like I said earlier, it just sets off like wildfire, and the next thing you know, it's right through your town, right through the community. It's not hard to access, and anyone can get it. We do a lot of work with the primary schools, high schools, youth centres, and with those guys, what we do, we go out and we educate the dangers on smoking and vaping. Like I said, we're really focusing on vaping in the bigger areas now, as vaping's gone crazy. We go out, we take a vape out with us. We'll pull the vape apart, show them what's a vape, what it's made of, how it's designed, what it's designed for, We show them all the chemicals that are put into that vape, how they affect your body. We've got big pull-up charts, showing what individual parts of the body the vape will affect and the chemicals will affect in a body when someone's smoking. We've got charts of someone who's vaped a long time ago, a while back, and then where they are now, So if we can get out into these communities and these schools and youth centres and teach the youth of what vaping has done to a certain person or what it's doing to a certain person, and they visually see that, then they're getting an understanding of how it's affecting them, Once we go down to these schools, there are a lot of kids who are already addicted, and a lot of the kids who don't vape, a lot of the kids who are just getting into it, a lot of kids who have been doing it for a long time who are addicted, and, we can see that little group who are already addicted to vaping, and we have one-on-one talks with them, and we say, look, if you don't want to talk in front of this group, we've got an office uptown. You can come up to our office, sit back and have some one-on-one yarns. We're pretty good here because we've got a team of 6 who work for me. I'm the coordinator. We've got 3 males and 3 females, and we've got a couple of older guys and a few younger guys. So we've got guys who have just came out of school working with us and older guys, and, we give them the opportunity. You don't have to talk to all of us. You don't even have to talk to him or her. If you want to pick someone who you're comfortable talking with, you can have a yarn with them and they can, give you more education, or they can steer you in the right direction for NRTs or whatever it is you need, with the help of getting off those vapes, if the government can stop the easy access of vaping, that would make a huge difference especially in Kalgoorlie and down in Esperance. Some of these towns are big mainstream towns where we go out further to the smaller towns like Lenore or Laverton, and some of the communities where it's not a really big issue. It's if they don't stop this easy flow of vape, well, it's going to become a real big issue out in those smaller communities, and then out into the communities out in the bush, the really remote communities, So if they can stop the easy access, like I talked about earlier, you can just get online and buy a big pack of vapes in bulk. If they can stop all this stuff online happening, there should be ways the government can stop all this kind of stuff. The government can stop you from buying a gun online or whatever it is if it's dangerous. So why can't the government stop people buying vapes in bulk?
Let's talk about the role of GPs in dealing with patients who vape and those who might want to quit. Our expert in this field is Professor Renee Batoon from Avondale University and the University of Notre Dame, Australia. Professor Renee Batoon is a respiratory physiologist, and she has 40 years of experience, both clinical and academic, in nicotine addiction and smoking cessation. She started the first smokers clinic at St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney in 1979. Fast forward 40 years, and 1 month ago, she started the first vapers clinic.
Interestingly enough, I started the very first ever smokers clinic in 1979 in Sydney at St Vincent's Hospital. And the need then was because I saw how preventable so many diseases we were treating then, respiratory, cardiovascular diseases there were, and that there was really very little in the way of prevention going on. So I was very pleased to be able to do that, knowing very little about it, and starting a clinic where thousands of people came over a long period of time to seek help. But not everybody needed help to quit, we know that, to quit smoking, but certain people had real trouble with it. And we were able, and myself and a team that I then developed over time, to look at what was going on with smokers, what was nicotine addiction. Nobody had written much about it, knew anything about it at all, let alone how to treat it, manage it. Fast forward 40 years, as the prevalence of smoking, of course, has gone down hugely in Australia, and the vaping has gone up hugely in Australia. Because of that, keep in mind that Australia was targeted by the tobacco industry for vaping because our prevalence of smoking was so low. Here was a new market that they could potentially build. And what's happened now, of course, in the upshot of that, is that lots of young people have taken it up, lots of older people have seen this as a way of reducing harm and have been recommended perhaps to go over to it. And then now they're finding out that they have no exit strategy for this. How do I get out of vaping? I've been doing this for 5 years or 4 years or 10 years. I've seen people now, and as young as 13, I might add, who've come to seek help to stop vaping. And they've really, there's no specialty at all in Australia. Australia-wide, nobody had even thought too much about how to help vapers quit. There's even little publications on this. I'm the editor-in-chief of a journal. I know the research really well, and smoking and vaping. I'm really across the literature really well here. But I thought, oh gosh, time for retirement. What was I thinking? It's time to start a new clinic called the Vaping Cessation Clinic, which I've now started. And the idea to do this is to inform me, just as I did with the Smokers Clinic, what's the best management plans, what's the best strategy, what's the protocol, what should we do? And perhaps to inform me of sort of research possibilities that we could look at. Do vapers have the same needs in pharmacotherapy? Do vapers need the same sort of treatment for their withdrawals? We learnt earlier with smokers that 1 in 3 smokers gets a mouth ulcer from quitting smoking. People didn't know that. We've reported on that. So lots of reports, things like constipation, don't get a wrap either. Things that happen to people when they try to quit nicotine. Is it the same with vaping? And that's the principle about this Vapers Clinic. The grip is tight. They're seriously using much more than they had expected to ever use. They feel that their withdrawals are far more significant. It's harder to stop doing it. They're, I suppose, because of the capacity to vape, both in kids and in adults, fairly well determined by your environment. You could be doing it all day, literally in your pocket, puff, puff, back in your pocket. Nobody knows you're doing it, and you could be doing that all day long. And kids are opportunistic. They may not vape straight away. They may see the opportunity that they can do it now in the back of the room in class or at home under the blankets, so they do it more opportunistically. But what they do notice is that there's a very limited time between the last time I did it and the next time I need to do it. So that latency, the period between doing it, gets very, very short. And that's pretty what you expect. Nicotine's got a very short half-life. It's only 40 minutes. Remember that. That's why cigarettes are packet 25 in a day. Hello, everybody. And they don't realise that that's your waking day divided up by the half-life of nicotine, 25 in a packet. Is it the same for vaping? Are they doing it really to self-medicate withdrawals, which happen, as I said, very quickly? This isn't a drug that hangs around long. It doesn't hang around long at all. Therefore, you've got to do it again. You become symptomatic. So those short-term symptoms like distress, depression, aggression. Aggression's a good one. Doesn't get a lot of talked about too, but people get very aggressive, as we've heard with smoking. That happens with vaping as well. They become agitated. And an interesting one we've been hearing from younger people, as we've heard from older people too, but very young, is they can't concentrate without it. Yeah. So I can't think of anything else. I'm focusing my attention, this is fairly typical of drug addiction, generally on this, but it helps me concentrate, and that's because it works in that particular part of the brain that does the very thing. So many calls and inquiries, and parents, of course, with their adolescent children, and younger people, older people who really want to get out of this. As I said, they've got no exit strategy now. So I'm expecting that once we start doing this and rolling it out a bit more and making it more available to the rest of the public, that we'll see more and more people attending this, because we know, today I'm speaking at the APSAD conference, we know that that's the Australasian Society for Drug and Alcohol Society, which is the biggest drug addiction conference in Australia. That one, I've been speaking about this, and we're learning that people more and more are calling quit lines about quitting vaping, as we have had a huge role, and GPs in particular have had a huge role, all allied health has, in helping smokers, identifying smokers. Number one thing, ask, of course, and you do that with vaping. And also, so you ask, do you smoke? You ask, do you vape? And you also ask, do you do both? Because about a third of people who vape also smoke as well. And that's an interesting phenomenon we're seeing. Often if we ask them the detail of this, if you'd have your brothers, what would you rather do? I think I'd rather smoke, but vaping is just so innocuous. Nobody really knows I'm doing it, and I can't smoke everywhere, but I can just about vape everywhere. So we do need to ask about both. And then we can do these sorts of assessments, and it is getting tricky. How do you assess dependency on vaping? Very much like the 3 A's or the 5 A's, however you want to translate those things, and how much time you've got. You might ask an adult who is more autonomous and can do this whenever they like, how soon after waking, this question about smoking, how soon after waking do you now vape? Open your eyes and do it straight away. Time to first vape, it's called now, and we're utilising that, and that's well correlated with dependence. But keep in mind, in a younger person, they may not be able to do it straight away. So you just need to know how significant their symptoms are when they have to defer it. So the questions we're asking, we're still developing. I'm developing, right as we speak, a test, an oral salivary cotinine, which is the metabolite of nicotine, a cotinine test to look at what you're getting out of the vapes you use. This is one of the difficulties we have with quantifying vapes. So you might say, a person might say to their doctor, I'm using 3,000 puffed vape. I'm using it up in 3 days or in 3 weeks. Is that, gosh, that's terrible if it's quick. They may, of course, be buying a product that's got terrible, the product content has no reliability, there's no quality control over any of it. So you might find that the batteries have gone flat, literally. And they think they've used it all up. My gosh, I've used the vape up in the whole day. Isn't that terrible? I must be seriously addicted. And that may not be the case. But the other ones who say, look, I'm doing it all the time and I get withdrawals between use, that's a bit of an indicator. Increasingly, people are writing articles and papers and information for GPs. So I believe there are articles coming out soonish, probably always a little late because these things need to be peer reviewed. So it is coming. Having been taught and I teach this at various universities, in the medical schools. We hope in the nursing schools they're getting some lectures on this. It's a bit slow, which I think is unfortunate. So the more you can read up, everybody personally, the better on this topic, but there's not a lot out there at the moment. Quitlines are scrambling themselves to get more information and to get a more evidence-based information. And sometimes there's an enormous amount of mythology out there. I think the GP's role is exactly what it was with smoking, a huge role, a huge, significant and important role to play in vaping and vaping cessation in particular. From my perspective, we don't want to see people long-term users of this substance having to acquire it, access it, pay for it indefinitely.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope that you have come away from this with some strong takeaways that you can implement. This is an ongoing issue, particularly in Australia. All eyes are on us and how we deal with this medical prescription model. It is a rapidly changing landscape, and GPs play a really important role in supporting people to quit. If anyone wants more information on this, you are more than welcome to visit our website, www.acosh.org, and please subscribe to our newsletter where we'll keep you up to date with how this is playing out.